We are live at 11:05. I think it may be right at 11:05. But let me introduce myself. I'm BC with Spirit Cars. This is Chris, Mr. Fiberglass. Behind the camera is Josh, the voice of Spirit Cars. And what we're going to do today, we had a question of how do you mix fiberglass? And it's really simple, but then there's a lot of nuances and a lot of ways that things can go wrong. Fiberglass is sensitive to heat and it's actually, this is fiberglass. And you can see the glass mat. The resin is a polyester resin, so all it's doing is holding the fiberglass together, because like this, it's pretty flexible. But when you put fiberglass with resin in it, it gets pretty hard. So you got your polyester resin, and you have a catalyst. It's methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, and I don't know what all of it does, but the peroxide is what makes it kick, and it will burn. This is, of all the chemicals we have in the shop here, this is probably the one that would burn the most. So safety goggles is probably always a good thing, and a big suit, and I've got my Michael Jackson interpretation going on here. I was doing something else, not for this necessarily, but it's always handy when you're doing some body work to maybe smear it around with your finger. I was doing some Frenching. We'll show you that in a second. So anyway, we'll start with a 70-degree rule. And today, what do you think today is? About 80 degrees, 90 degrees? This is not a set in stone, but it's pretty standard across the board, whether you're using activated paint or an activated polyester resin or even a Bondo or something. At 70 degrees, all of your temperatures are based on that. So if the manufacturer says that when I catalyze this, at say 1.5%, which is a percentage that you really want to use, you can go a little bit less or a little bit more, but you can't get too far out of that range. So if I catalyze this at 70 degrees at 1.5%, I should have approximately 12 to 14 minutes before this starts to turn into a gel. Now the 70-degree rule is, that's the manufacturer's suggested. They base everything off of that. Now if it turns to 80 degrees, and I had 12 minutes, when I catalyzed it at 1.5%, I now have 6 minutes. If it goes up another 10 degrees to 90 degrees, if I catalyze, I had 6 minutes now, not 12 minutes, I go down to 3 minutes. Now it goes the other way too. Now if I go to 60 degrees, it may take me twice as long for this to dry. And if I get to 50, it may not get hot enough to even start the activation process. So be aware, you can put a little more catalyst in, a little less catalyst. Just as a rule of thumb, 1.5% is basically 22 cc's per quart. 22 cc's is about 3/4 of a shot glass. And it looks like I've got about a little less than a pint here. I've got this measuring cup in my squirt bottle, so I can squirt it, and this is going to be a little hot right here, so we'll see how good Chris is. Yeah, it'll be smoke, and this will smoke. So if you got it kicked awful hot, at least set it down somewhere where if it catches on fire, you're not going to burn your building down. Just set it on the concrete to the side. Or I've heard stories that it catches on fire. I've had old resin that I wanted to get rid of, and I've tried my best to catch it on fire, and I've never been able to, though. So once you get it in there, the reason this is red is because it's got a dye in it, and it's called vanishing red. Once this kicks, it actually turns kind of a green color. So you get it stirred up. Got it stirred. This is kicked. Chris has probably about 12 to 15 minutes, and no more than that. So I'm going to let him put some of this on, and I'm going to show you what we're doing here. This is not Mike, Jerry.
Larry.
Larry. Jerry. Larry, yeah, Jerry. I won't say your last name.
Larry.
Larry.
Not Jerry.
Not Jerry. This is Larry. But if you want to go bowling, he's the man. I'm telling you what. So we put these wheel tubs in here. This is a 27 tall T that another manufacturer made the body, but he brought it to us to modify. We changed the trunk around. We put the drip rail in here for the trunk. The trunk was hinging up here, so we got that all fitting. He's got these really wide tires, but he doesn't want the tires sticking out. He wants them in, tucked under the car. I had these wheel tubs just as a part from another car we do. They actually fit under a Model A perfectly. So we installed them in, but they were too narrow in the middle. He wanted them to come out a little bit. So what we did, we cut this section out, and that's what you see Chris doing right now. We've cut this about that far, took a chunk out of it, and moved that over. So instead of being so wide, if you look underneath here, you see how far it sits in from the frame. Now if you look over here, this is where we've moved it to. Move just a touch. So now we have the wheel tub sitting right flush with the frame. So we'll modify all that and get it going. Now if you can work from that side, we're going to do a dual thing. We wanted to do some French tail lights, and yesterday I wasn't ready. It was like, okay, 3, 2, 1, it's 11:05, so I was thinking out loud. So everything I said yesterday as far as doing this pertains, but I've modified how I do it a little bit, and somebody had a good idea that it needed to be anyway. I don't have a lot of room between here and here. So I've took my PVC, I put a backing in it, drilled a hole so that the light will go into that. I've cut my hole here. Now what's going to happen, this will recess into here and push into that. I don't have a lot of room, but my light has got a couple studs that'll push out through there, and the bulbs or the wires come through there. Marking a hole, here's a trick I like to use is I just put tape on where I'm going to do it, and then it's a whole lot easier to mark that tape. I just mark that tape, I cut the hole. Got it all fit, ready to go. Glue it in. If you use the right kind of glue, not an issue at all. I got a glue story. Years ago, I was working on an old Mercedes metal car, had a lot of rust, and I had built the lower rocker panel. It was a kind of a rare car, and not rare enough to make it super valuable, but rare enough where I couldn't get parts. And I had heard about a guy that had this product that would glue metal together. I didn't believe it, but I actually called him. And the product was called Diffuser. A lot of you may hear about or know about it now, but back then he had just figured it out. So I called the guy on the phone. He's an old body man, and what it was, he found the product that they glued the nose cone on the Patriot missile on. And he had this product, and he said, wait a minute. So he glued some metal parts together, and it held. So he convinced me it would work, and I did that Mercedes, and it worked great. And anymore in the body world, metal panels are glued together. They're not welded together so much anymore. He said, at the time, he said, the glue works great. My biggest problem is to get it in a container that you can get it out of. And this thing he had for a contraption that you got it out of, it looked like you were in Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. You had this thing with a mixer on the end of it and all went. So the point of that whole story is there is some amazing glues out there. I haven't glued this together yet, but if I don't have it glued together right, that is going to fall apart and his taillight's going to fall out. Or if I don't have this glued together right with the right kind of materials, you're going to see a crack line. So I've actually put one in, so we can start getting excited. I've got this bonded in. I've got my finished Bondo on it yet. I've got close. I got a few more pinholes and stuff to fill. Like I said, I don't have a lot of room in there, but luckily this has studs that screw into it, so I don't have to reach in there and try to find a screw. The stud will just push through. When I screw it in, there's some old school stuff right there. So who says you can't have an old rat rod out of fiberglass? And maybe one of these days I'll show you how to paint a car so that it actually looks like it rusted. So we can get a true rat rod with French taillights. But for today, that's it. That's how you mix fiberglass. a lot of different chemicals out there, and you never know. There may be one out there that worked perfectly that just hasn't been marketed for that. So if you're in one industry and you think it might work, try it. If it don't work, just undo it and try it again. Kind of like this. I was thinking out loud how to do it, but we wound up just keep going until you get it figured out. That's going to look pretty tough, though. I like that a lot. So that's it for today.